Hey guys, today on the Vinyl Rundown, I'm going to tell you how I obtained a classic John Coltrane album for less than $15 and tell you a little bit about the album itself. So let's talk about me walking into my local Goodwill, scanning through the records. This beauty pops up. It's not called Olay, it's called Olay Coltrane. It alliterates, Olay Coltrane. 1961 album on Atlantic. In pretty good shape. Unfortunately, records at the Goodwill by my house are now $4.99. Well, for this record, that is a bargain. Am I right? It is a bargain. How's the hair? The haircut is also a bargain, as you may notice. I took a quick check of the vinyl, looked good, got it home, went to play it, and found a problem. When I took the record out of the sleeve a second time, I noticed that the label was black. And the label said Verve on it. And the label didn't say Coltrane Olay on it. It said Bolacete at Monterey. Bolacete is a Brazilian guitar player. Jazz-ish, jazzy, poppy. Really, he's a jazz musician, I would say. But this is a funny thing because my mind played a trick on me. I so wanted to believe that I had Coltrane Olay that I literally looked at the letters in his name, O-L-A, Ola, and somehow I convinced myself into believing that I had Coltrane Olay. So I paid $5 for this great cover and this very mediocre. You can get this album for $5-10, no problem. Talented guy, but this is not a classic like this is. So now what do? I'm into this thing for $5. I wait, I bide my time. I check eBay once in a while, and lo and behold, what do I find? Somebody selling the complement of this. Did I find somebody selling a Bolacete album cover with a Coltrane inside? No, but check it out. Somebody was selling this for $20. And I wasn't gonna pay $20 for it because I just wouldn't. What's wrong with this? This is a good copy of the album. Well, here's what's wrong with it. Extreme damage, extreme mold, disgusting. Like, I don't even want this in my house. I've been storing this outside in my backyard all week before I throw it out. I should have opened the video by tearing this in half and freaking you guys out. Pretty much the same exact cover. It is Atlantic 1373. Important difference is where the stereo sticker is there. It's not a sticker, but like they printed it on later. The one I got at the thrift store, the stereo is on the left side, and here it's on the right side. Is that correct? Yeah. So this guy was charging $20. I bid $7. He countered at $9. Done deal. I ordered it, came in the mail. You can see it, you can hear it. We don't want to play too much of it because we'll get some kind of a violation, but there it is. We're hearing side one, the song Olay. I cleaned that baby up. It sounds fine. It's VG. I don't think it's VG plus, it's VG. There's a couple of pops and clicks, but I cleaned it very well. It's very flat. It sounds fine except for a couple of ticks and at least one audible scratch. That's very short in duration. So happy with this purchase overall. It was a good save for a typical Greg idiotic move. I figured out a way to save it, so I'm now congratulating myself. I'll tell you about the album in a second. And the Bolacete album on Verve, this is him live at the Monterey Jazz Festival, which I competed in high school. I have a very fond memories of being up in Monterey, one of the most beautiful parts of California. Bolacete, his name means seven ball in Portuguese. He's Brazilian. Anyway, this is not a great album, but it's okay. What about the detective work? Now I have an unmatched pair. I have one release on vinyl and another release on the cover. How do I mix and match this? The covers are almost the same, except I showed you the stereo logo moved around. If it was a mono, they just wouldn't have put that stereo, so. The record says PR on it. The actual album has the initials PR. So what is PR? I had to do some detective work. PR stands for Presswell Records, which is the name of a recording plant that Atlantic used, I guess in the 60s and 70s. But when was, what vintage album is this? What year was it created? The album that Coltrane put out was recorded in 61, but this album does not appear to be an original pressing, and nor is the cover original pressing. So, more detective work. These two babies, guess which one is older? The one that's yellowed. This is the one that came from the thrift store with a cover. This is the one that came from eBay with the vinyl. And my detective work is I looked at all these great Atlantic releases. So many cool records on here. Les McCann, Modern Jazz Quartet, Hubert Laws, Coltrane, Joe Zawinul. I looked for the highest catalog number, which is this Art Ensemble of Chicago, Baptism, like baptism. And look how modern that is. That doesn't really look 60. So this album looks like it was from 73. So the vintage of the vinyl is probably 73, not 61. That's okay. And the same detective work with this thing, looking for records, what years they were released. And a lot of cool records on here. Ornette and Tenor, Flip Wilson, Yusef Lateef, Ornette Coleman, Wilson Pickett, Charles Lloyd in Europe, Hubert Laws. So I looked up a lot of these, a random sampling of these records, and they all appear to be as late as 67, 68. So there's my detective work. I think what I have is a 1968 cover and a 1973 stereo reissue of the classic John Coltrane, Olay Coltrane. So let's talk about this record. This is considered a classic, must-have-ish, essential Coltrane record. It was the last of 4 records that he made on the Atlantic label. Now, there were records put out after he left Atlantic, which are not official Coltrane. He didn't supervise them or have any say-so in what was on them. This is the last official Coltrane supervised release on Atlantic, 1961. He's in transition. He already had signed with Impulse. So in a sense, this was a contractual obligation release, if you want to look at it that way. He had already recorded Africa Brass as his first record on the Impulse label, recorded that before he recorded this. But this is still considered a classic essential record. Let me tell you a little bit about the record. Where did I put all those? What am I going to do with this? I guess I'm going to throw it away. Only 3 songs on here. Side 1 is one tune only, Olay. Spanish flavored, Spanish inflected. Some think maybe it was influenced by the success of Miles Davis' Sketches of Spain, which was really based on a Spanish piece called Concerto de Aranjuez by Rodrigo, I think. Anyway, this is a completely original Coltrane track, and it's got Spanish flavor in terms of the melodies and modes that he uses, that Spanish flamenco-y style harmony. Not the rhythm. The rhythm is not especially Spanish in my opinion, but that's an 18-minute song on side 1. Side 2, well, what about the personnel, Greg? Let's talk about the personnel. Who played on this record besides John Coltrane? Freddie Hubbard on trumpet. Let's hear a little bit more. The great Freddie Hubbard on trumpet. McCoy Tyner on piano. I think this album showcases McCoy Tyner pretty well. To me, this record is not Coltrane out in front being I'm the solo act with these great guys behind me. This album, Coltrane, I think, does a good job of showcasing all the members of his band, and McCoy Tyner, to me, stands out as being prominent on this record. This particular bit that we're listening to is really kind of a bass solo. Ooh, bass with a, what do you call that thing? The bowed bass. Reggie Workman, Elvin Jones on drums. So you've got 2 bass players, Reggie Workman, Art Davis. I don't know which is playing on this track. But the interesting thing about who's playing on here, it says that you've got someone named George Lane on flute. Who is George Lane? Who is George Lane? Tell me. There's nobody named George Lane. That is one of these contractual deals where the musician can't use his real name because he's under contract on another label. This is the brilliant Eric Dolphy is on this record, and he doesn't get any credit because of record label BS. Eric Dolphy plays flute and alto sax. So you've got Coltrane and Eric Dolphy on one session together. That is awesome. Okay, let's go to side two. Side two starts with a 10-minute song called Dahomey Dance. That is not like, are you Dahomey? No, that's not what, the word Dahomey is a region in Western Saharan Africa. One of these regions that's gone through a lot of turmoil, was very infamous for being a center of slave trade, African slave trade, run by a lot of kings. I think the French took it over and the English did something. And African history, I'm learning a lot about African history just by paying attention to jazz, but there's so much rich history there that we know nothing about. Side two is called Aisha. So we've kind of lost the Spanish flavor and the Spanish culture already. Side two, we start with an African song, name song, Dahomey, and track number two is called Aisha, which is an Islamic word. That was one of Muhammad's wives, Aisha. Well, guess what? He's also the wife of McCoy Tyner. So Aisha is a song that McCoy Tyner wrote for his wife Aisha, and she outlived him. She may even still be alive, I do not know. Recording engineer Phil Ramone. Freddie Hubbard appears by arrangement with Blue Note Records, but George Lane, why did they do that with Eric Dolphy? I don't know. In conclusion, I took us a little bit by finding an album to go with a cover. I'm very happy that I have a copy of Coltrane's Olay Coltrane, 1961, Atlantic Records. Sounds great. My next challenge is to get this off without tearing it up too much. This was just released, by the way, Rhino Records. You can get that for probably 20, 25 bucks, something like that. I saw that a bunch of them at the store yesterday, so it must have just come out. So pick this up on Rhino if you can't find an Atlantic copy. An Atlantic copy, a mono copy could go for 200 or 300 bucks. This is stereo, obviously. But do not buy that crappy garbage Euro trash. There's a lot of Euro trash companies putting this out. Doxy or DOL or Jazzwax. Don't buy that garbage. Buy something that can trace its vintage back to the actual record company and the actual analog masters, and where at least some people are still getting paid on the royalties. Don't buy that Euro trash that's all over eBay for $19.99. All right, guys, Coltrane, Olay Coltrane. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and have a good one.